Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ellen. I'm a working fine artist. I've been doing this for many years now full time, and I created this channel as a way to support other creatives. Whether you're new or whether you've been around for a while, I just sort of share my whole process of how I go about doing this type of thing full time. So if you're new, welcome. And if you've been with me for a while, welcome back. It's always nice to have you back here with me. Today's topic was based on a question. I posted a question to my social media channels asking for your questions. I wanted to know what your most pressing questions were for me. I said you could ask me anything. And so I compiled all of those questions together to answer in this video. I thought this was a great way to be able to answer whatever questions you might have in great detail so that I could answer them thoroughly and hopefully to your satisfaction. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. All right, Black on Light Art asks me how to choose on which product or projects to focus on if I'm an artist and want to eventually make a living of it. This is a good question. Just speaking from personal experience, and I've touched on this a little bit before, but I have a really hard time narrowing down what it is I want to work on because I have so many ideas. I have so many things that I want to do. It's really overwhelming to me to know where to focus all of my efforts. So what I normally do, what I have found always brings me back to focus is working in series. That works for me. It may not work for other people, but if you are having a hard time knowing where to put forth your efforts, try not to think about what's going on so much in the world and what other people are gravitated to unless it speaks to you as well. It's more important for you to do what is important for you. I started working on my spirit animal series back when no one was doing anything like that. A lot of people were calling me a little bit out there. They were saying I was a bit woo-woo by doing that. And it didn't stop me from doing it. No one else was doing really much of that at the time, and so I stood out. So if you think that the things that you're working on are not going to appeal to other people because it's not what more popular artists are doing, that's what you need to be focusing on. Because if no one has seen it before, if it's something new, it is going to grab people's attention for the better or for the worse. Worse is not always, and when I say worse, I mean if somebody, puts a comment in your feed that they think that you're a witch, which yes, I've had that happen before because of my spirit animal series. Go figure. It did not stop me from doing it because it was what I wanted to do. And the people who did identify with it, they found me. I presented my work to places that other people who were like me congregated at, and it just sort of took off from there. So I would recommend you focusing on a series if you can. If you really are just overwhelmed, try not to focus so much on subject matter that other people are doing, but what you want to do. And if you work in a series, it always keeps you focused. And when you come back to your table, you know you've got a direct path. You know where it is that you want to work from because it'll always be there waiting for you. And when you're not working on it, if you're working in a series, it always also gives you an opportunity to think how you can add to that series, how you can expand upon that series. And so a lot of people think that series work is very limiting, but I find it to be just the opposite. I think that once you set a path for yourself, if you find a series that you want to work on, it can open up a whole new world for you. Not only that, but if you work in a series where you're working with the same subject matter, or at least type, like if you're doing flowers and only working with flowers, or animals and only working with animals, or something along those lines, and you're working with the same types of mediums and substrates, it will allow you to become very, very good at it. And if you become good at something, then people are going to want to pay attention to you even more, because they're going to want to know, how do you do that? And so that would be my recommendation, and I wish you the best of luck with that. Question number 2, Knitting Habitat asks, do you struggle with perfectionism in your craft? And if so, how do you overcome it? Yeah, well, I did actually struggle with that when I was working on my Mother Earth series, which was 2014, I think, through 2014. I worked on that series for a year, and it was a very large large to me, around 18 by 24, anywhere from 16 by 18, 18 by 24, which is large for me. And that series was very daunting. It was incredibly time consuming, and I was working in watercolor, and it's very easy in watercolor to become very detail oriented, especially if you work in hot press, because it's not as forgiving as cold press and some other substrates are. So I did have an issue with that, and it became kind of an obsession to me, because the more detailed I became, the more hyper realistic I wanted my work to be. And for me, it set me off on not a super path, really, because I really deep inside didn't really want to be that type of an artist. I wanted to be loose and expressive and things like that. So that was actually what turned me around. It was completely changing my style. I went from my Mother Earth series straight into my Power Animal series, and that was the paper. Yupo paper is what I worked on, which is essentially a plastic. And so the inks that I used on top, if you've ever used Yupo paper, or if you've never heard of it, it's a plastic, and it's very shiny, and it's non-porous. So whatever you put on top of it, everything just sort of slides around on there, and you have no idea where things are going to go. You can control it if you really want to, but that was not my intent. I wanted the ink to do the work. So I forced myself to work on substrates that really did not allow me the ability to be real detail oriented. And so that's what really helped me out. Because if you really can't control the medium, then you are open to the element of surprise. And for me, it is what started my entire series, over 150 paintings on Yupo paper, and it was the most freeing experience that I ever had. And actually, I'm starting to go back to working in Yupo paper again after about a year off, because I miss that spontaneity. So that would be what I would recommend if you are having issues with that, to try a substrate where it really doesn't allow you the luxury of being detail oriented. Thank you for your question. Mary Lou Cerami asks, where do you prefer to have your prints or print on demand products made? I use Printful for a lot of my merchandise that I offer on Etsy, and I have also started using a new service. And the name of it's a newer company. It's called Gooten, Gooten, Gooten. I'll put links to all of these down in the description bar below. they are an upcoming company that I've been using now for 3 or 4 months, and I really like them. They're really on top of their game. Now, like I said, they're a newer company. They don't have as many of the bells and whistles that Printful does, but they pay attention to customer service, and they want to work together with you as the artist in a partnership. It's a little bit more personal than Printful because it's a smaller company, and I like giving smaller companies the opportunity to work with these companies because they do tend to be a little bit more personalized, I guess. So those are the two that I use for my merchandise. And for prints, I am still using Finer Works, and they also have their own website. They're based out of Texas. I've worked with Finer Works for a very long time for my larger prints. My 5x7 prints, 8x10 and 11x14 that I offer, I do here in my home studio on my Canon 100 series printer. And my 16x20 paintings that I cannot do on my home printer because it doesn't accommodate that size, I use Finer Works for, and they do drop shipping for me. So I have my signature already on my images. So it is the ones, my 16x20s. And so those I have sent directly from Finer Works. They will ship it to my buyer for me, and they are very reliable. They have great customer service, and they are always a constant, meaning they have constantly good customer service. And so, it's a really good partnership that I have with them. I recommend them all the time to people who ask me. So those are who I use. Thank you, Mary Lou, for your question. Next up, Kat Morgan Studio, who is also on Instagram, by the way. I follow her. Why do you choose to sell on Etsy and not direct from your own website? For anyone starting out now, would you recommend Etsy? This is a really, really good question. Why did I choose to sell on Etsy? Well, the main reason that I chose to sell on Etsy is because when I started full-time, I was starting without any business sense whatsoever, and I had no following whatsoever other than followers who read a blog that I was writing at the time. I had a pretty decent sized blog at the time, and so I had followers of my writing, but I had no followers for my artwork. And when I transitioned to doing this full time, I started on Etsy because it was where the traffic was. And since nobody knew me, I knew that if I created my own website, I would not be able to generate any traffic there. So I started on Etsy, and at the same time, I started a business page on Facebook, and I posted there, and I posted on my personal page, but not as much. I really focused on my business page. Back then, in those days, 2012, I had to think for a minute. Back in 2012 or 2014, anyway, back then, Facebook was a little bit different. They really allowed you to have a lot more control over what you posted and who saw your posts. Basically, anyone who liked my page saw my posts. It's not really that way now, so I realize it's a little bit more difficult for people who are just getting started on Facebook, although you can still sell things on Facebook. But yes, so that's why. And as far as starting now, if you're a newer artist starting on Etsy, I would say you can start anywhere you want as long as you put your focus and your attention into it. I think there is just as much of a good chance for you to have a great deal of success on Etsy as you would on Instagram or on Facebook or on your own website, but you have to put your full energy into it. as people are sort of finding out about social media. The trick to social media is being out there all the time, doing 1, 2, 3 posts a day if you're on Instagram, using stories, using reels, using all of these opportunities that they're giving you, and you just have to keep yourself out there so that people know you're there, that they don't forget you're there, because there's such an oversaturated market. If you post, haphazardly, people are going to forget that you are there because they're being inundated with new things all the time. So I think that you don't have to be successful solely on Etsy. Absolutely not. Etsy has its own problems, of which I will not get into today. But for me, because I'm already established there, even though I have a website, even though I have the ability to sell on my website, people know me. They know me on Etsy, and people tend to not like change. Customers like to know where you are. They don't like you moving around too much, and they are used to me being on Etsy. So that's where I plan to stay for now. So the second part of her question is, do you also sell in local shops or galleries, or does most of your income come via Etsy or elsewhere? 50% of my income comes from Etsy. The remaining 50% is divided between gift shops and print shops. Print shops meaning like a print shop slash gallery, I guess, that I have in the Midwest, from Facebook, and from in-person art shows. So I have my fingers sort of in a lot of different things. I don't like relying on one particular place as a source of income, because if I did and something happens to that one place, then I'm really kind of out of luck. So I always recommend that you diversify. You want your art to be in as many places as possible anyway. So I personally, and this may not work for everybody, but for me personally, it is better for me to be in a lot of places than to just focus on one particular place. I want to be found in multiple locations. So if something happens like a pandemic, where in-person shops are having to close because they can't keep their businesses afloat, if I relied solely on those places, I would really be in trouble right now. So it helps to have your work in a lot of different places so that if something happens, then you've got sort of a backup. And then the last part of her question, how has the pandemic affected how you sell your art, and have you had to adapt or make any major changes? This is a really good question. Since I was already established online, and since everyone was home and didn't really have a whole lot to do other than be online to communicate with their family and friends and shop online, because stores were closed and everyone was being asked to remain at home, people were gravitating towards Etsy. They were purchasing things that that they wanted, that they may not have purchased before because they were going out to stores to purchase things in person. So I was very fortunate in that regard. I did get my in-person show canceled last year. Thankfully, my income is not reliant on in-person shows during the summertime. For me, that's good, but a few artist friends of mine were deeply impacted because a lot of their income, like 80% of their income, is from doing in-person shows. And when those were canceled, that was really a big issue for them. But yes, my income was not as great in 2020. And so I was trying to find ways to sort of navigate through that. And what I found during that time, you just have to do research and sort of provide what the public is looking for at the time. Etsy has a podcast, the Etsy Success Podcast, I think it's called. And you don't have to be on Etsy to appreciate this podcast. In fact, I recommend it for any artist, because what they will do is they will, I think 2 or 3 times a year, they did it several times last year, they have a trend expert that all she does is sit and look at what people are coming to Etsy and searching for. So she really knows her stuff on trends. I can't remember what her name is though. So, but I will link to the Etsy Success Podcast down in the description bar below. But they tell you what the upcoming trends are for summer, for holidays, for the Christmas season, for the year ahead. And so you can kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what people are purchasing, what they are looking for, and see if it fits into your business model. And if it is, then you can have an idea of what is selling so that you can start to offer things like that. And that's pretty much what I did. People were not buying art as much because people were saving their money for groceries, and they were having there was a lot of hardship, as you well know, during the pandemic. A lot of people lost their jobs. Art for many people is considered a luxury. And so I had to sort of shift my way of thinking, and I started offering more merchandise. People can justify needing an iPhone case or a grocery bag, a tote bag, new coffee mugs, just little purchases to sort of cheer up their mood, give them something to look forward to in the mail, make them feel a little bit better. And so my sales increased a lot with smaller items like that. I still did sell a lot of original work on Facebook, but the majority of my income last year was from, I would say, from Etsy. As far as merchandise goes, it was pretty popular. As far as having to adapt, additionally, it made me start to think more about what I wanted to do in the future. A lot of the gift shops that I had my artwork at closed, and so that was really difficult for everyone. And I felt terrible for them, but it also did not give me an opportunity to have my artwork in in-person stores as well. So I started looking at teaching online. So I am going to be participating in an online class where I teach people how to use Yupo paper and inks like I used in my spirit animal series. So I'm involved in that, and some conservation projects I was asked to be involved in. So I am branching out. Things that are negative at the time, really it's amazing how resilient people are, how resilient businesses are. You just have to put your mind to it that you're going to figure something out so that you can keep your business afloat. And fortunately for me, that worked. This next question is actually a compilation of a bunch of questions that were asked about my printing process. So I'm just going to kind of go through really quickly and share with you my entire printing process for those of you who are interested in that. So first of all, I only work in around 11 by 14 size, so a little bit on the smaller scale. And when my paintings are finished, I scan them in on my 3-in-1 Canon printer. It has a scanner, and I scan them in at 300 DPI minimum. Once they're scanned in, then if it's small enough to not need to be stitched together, then I edit it in Photoshop Elements, and I also use PicMonkey to edit my photos. I will link to that below. Then I use a Canon 100 series printer. I love that printer. I've had it for several years now. I'll link to it below for you. It's never given me any problems, and the one quirk that I had with it was trying to figure out what kind of paper to use. They tell you that you should always use the kind of paper, the same brand of paper as the as the model make of your printer. So Canon printer equals Canon paper, right? Not for me. My prints and my paintings, they have a lot of color, a lot of saturated color. And so the Canon papers did not work very well for me, but I did eventually find a really good paper. And the one that I use is made by LexJet. It is the LexJet Archival Matte paper. I like it because it's a very crisp white color. It's a nice matte, professional looking paper. It does not warp or buckle when the color is deposited onto it. It's just a really nice paper. It doesn't smudge. You can't get it on Amazon currently, I don't believe. You have to go to their website. I will link to that website below. But they are really, really great papers. I wouldn't consider using another paper. Do I use borders around my images? I was asked that. I do not use borders around my image, around my prints. Mainly I don't, because my backgrounds are white anyway, so I don't really have a reason to. The majority of my background paintings are already white. On the prints that I make that have color edge to edge, my customers tell me they don't like borders. So I typically do what my customers want me to do, and so I don't include borders on them unless I am asked. If you offer prints, you could always just pose that as an option in the description. If somebody wants a border, then it's nothing really to just add something like that in. And let me see, I did write all of these down. Let me make sure that I'm not missing something here. No, that I believe that's it. So that is essentially my printing process. I offer 5x7, 8x10, and 11x14. I offered standard size prints. I do that for the convenience of my customers so that they don't feel like they have to get framing done that is custom and sometimes very expensive. This way they can just pull a frame right off the rack at any craft store, and they can pop their print in and be on their way. A lot of people, they don't mind, having odd sizes that they have to get professionally matted and framed. I just do this as a convenience to my customers, and they tell me that they appreciate that. So that's really about it as far as printing goes. And the final question that I have is from Nicole Kish, and she was asking me, I was wondering if you have experience or advice about renting a studio space for students to attend in person. I do not have any experience on this, so I unfortunately can't really answer that question that is going to be of any help. I have opinions on it, such as I think it's a great idea to do it. I think that a lot of people are looking for ways to supplement their income, and wanting to do something like that is a great idea. But what I would recommend and to you, considering again, I don't know a lot about it, but there are places that you can rent. If you get with a realtor, they'll easily tell you about businesses that have places that they are offering that you could use for studio space. Just make sure that either you ask them about insurance, if you have to purchase insurance, or if they will have insurance provided for you. Because if you have students coming in and taking classes, if one of them falls or hurts themselves in any way and the business itself does not offer insurance, you could be sued. So you want to protect your assets. So that would be my first, that would be the first light bulb moment that goes off in my head, is to ask about insurance and making sure that you protect yourself. But a lot of places they're on the expensive side, and if you're just starting out, it could be really costly for you to have to provide rent every month on a space that you're using for an art studio or to hold classes if you can't consistently get in a certain number of students. If it ends up being too expensive for you, I would recommend, maybe as a starting point and to see if you like it, if this is something that is new to you, perhaps check with Michael's or Hobby Lobby or another craft shop. And they're always, at least in my hometown, they're always looking for artists to teach classes. And they already have the classroom space. Of course, you would have to give up a little bit of your profit, I'm sure, to the business that you are working with, but it still, I think, is a good way to start out. And that way you don't have to worry about insurance, you don't have to worry about securing a location or paying rent every month. So that might be an option for you. So even though I don't have any personal experience, those are the first things that come off the top of my head that if I were looking, that I would definitely ask about or think about. So there you have it. That is everything. If you guys want to see more of these videos, if this wasn't too boring for you or too long, I know the video is a little bit on the long side, but I wanted to really answer your questions thoroughly, so that you didn't feel like you just had a quick, one word or one phrase typed answer out in the comment section. That those just really don't give in-depth detail the way I can do in a video. So if you would like more of these, let me know in the comments below. If you have questions for me, you can post them below or watch out for on my social media channels, and maybe once a month I will post new posts for you to ask me questions, and then I will compile all of them together and answer them for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and it's really great to see you guys. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Be well, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.